I'm Morgan Adams, 32 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the invisible middle child in the Adams family, a family defined more by money, reputation, and legacy than by love. Walking into our Boston mansion that Thanksgiving, I could feel the chill of marble floors under my heels and the colder air of judgment hanging above me. My father, Harold Adams, sat near the fire phone glued to his ear, whispering in that tone of importance he reserved for boardrooms and deals. My mother floated nearby, wine glass already half empty, pretending as always not to notice the storm in our family. My older brother Garrett, the golden boy, had never really worked a day in his life. He was handed the title of vice president the day he graduated, and since then spent more time with yachts and girlfriends than with clients or code. My younger sister Megan played influencer, posting polished images of her life as an Adams heir, while never setting foot inside the offices that built our fortune. I, on the other hand, had earned a degree in computer science and business at MIT. I had lived and breathed technology since I was a child, building apps when others were at parties. But in my father's eyes, that made me nothing more than the sweet academic daughter, with ideas not fit for the real world. I still remember the boardroom humiliation at 22. I had pitched a cloud integration system that could have saved our company years of decline. My father cut me off mid-sentence, dismissing me with a smile, as if I were a child playing at business. The board chuckled. I packed my bag in silence, the shame seared into my skin. That night, I vowed I'd never beg for his approval again. I left Boston, moved to San Francisco, and built my own path, brick by painful brick. The years were merciless. I survived on ramen in a studio apartment, working 80-hour weeks. I created Everest Holdings under a pseudonym, M.E. Stone, shielding my identity from the shadow of the Adams name. No one knew that the faceless founder acquiring startups and building cutting-edge integration platforms was me, the forgotten daughter. Over a decade, Everest Holdings grew into a $200 million powerhouse. I became known in the tech world as M.E. Stone, the reclusive genius no one really saw. And while they ignored me at family dinners, I quietly positioned Everest to one day acquire the very company they once said I had no right to touch. So that Thanksgiving, I wasn't returning as the overlooked middle child. I was returning as the woman who held their future in her hands. The dinner table glowed with crystal chandeliers and candles, the china plates gleaming with tradition. Garrett bragged about his yacht. Megan livestreamed her perfect pout and our family's holiday vibes. My father tapped his glass, clearing his throat with that commanding tone that once made me shrink into silence. "I have an announcement," he said. His voice carried authority, pride. "After decades of hard work, I've decided to sell Adams Software. The deal will be finalized tomorrow." Garrett nearly choked on his wine. Megan gasped dramatically, her phone still recording. My mother sipped her Chardonnay like it was oxygen. Then came the second blow. "The proceeds," my father continued, "will not be going to you children. Your mother and I are starting the Adams Foundation." The room exploded. Garrett slammed his fist. Megan wailed for her followers, and my mother pretended calm, though her hands trembled. I sat still, watching the storm unfold, taking a slow bite of pecan pie. Finally, my mother noticed my silence. "Morgan, you don't seem surprised." I set down my fork. My voice was steady, deliberate. "I just have one question. Who's the buyer?" My father puffed his chest, proud of the secret he held. "Everest Holdings, a very successful firm. They're paying $50 million, more than generous." The air froze. I let the pause stretch, savoring the electricity of the moment. Then I said, clear and calm, "Dad, I am Everest Holdings." The silence was absolute. Megan's phone trembled in her hands as she whispered to her audience, "Oh my God, my sister just said she owns Everest Holdings." Garrett knocked over his wine, the red liquid spilling like blood across the white tablecloth. My father's face twisted through disbelief, anger, fear. I stood after a decade of carrying the weight of invisibility and let them see me for who I had become. 10 years ago, you dismissed me. You told me my ideas were childish, but those ideas built Everest into what it is today. And tomorrow morning, every headline will say the same thing: Adams Software is now mine. The candles flickered, the turkey sat untouched, and my family stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. And for once, I didn't care if they understood, because finally they couldn't ignore me. My father's chair scraped loudly against the hardwood as he pushed back from the table, his face flushed with a rage I hadn't seen since childhood. "You're lying," he spat, his voice trembling more than he realized. "You're just trying to humiliate me in my own home." I didn't flinch. "Check the filings, Dad. Check the contracts. Everest Holdings is mine. M.E. Stone isn't some mysterious investor, it's Morgan Elizabeth Stone Adams, me." Megan dropped her phone with a gasp, the clatter echoing in the dining room. Garrett muttered something under his breath, probably calculating what this meant for his cushy lifestyle. My mother's wineglass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor, her carefully constructed calm finally cracking. For the first time in decades, I felt taller than my father. "You can't do this," he hissed, slamming his palm on the table. "You don't have the right. Adams Software is my legacy." I leaned forward, steady, deliberate. "And you sold it. To me. Without realizing it. That's not my fault, Dad. That's your arrogance. You wanted to prove I was insignificant, and you never once stopped to wonder if I had built something of my own. Now the company you ignored me for is in my hands." Garrett finally found his voice. "So what now, Morgan? You're just going to cut us all out after everything we've given you?" I laughed bitterly. "Everything you've given me, Garrett? You've never given me anything but insults and indifference. Megan's given me ridicule. Mom gave me silence. And Dad? He gave me humiliation in front of an entire boardroom when I was just 22. That's what you gave me. And you know what I used it. I used every wound to fuel me. And I built something greater than all of you combined." Megan's mascara was streaking down her face as she choked out, "But we're family. Family." The word tasted bitter. Family doesn't abandon their own. Family doesn't use one child as a punching bag while handing the others everything on a silver platter. You never wanted me as part of this family, unless it was convenient. Now it's not. The room was still, every word hanging heavy like smoke. My father's hand trembled as he reached for his glass, his voice barely a whisper. "You'll destroy us." "No," I said quietly. "I'll save what you couldn't. You had decades and you squandered them. I built Everest from nothing. I know how to adapt, how to innovate. Adams Software will thrive because of me, not in spite of me." Garrett stood abruptly, pointing a finger at me. "You're a traitor. Selling us out like this?" "I didn't sell you out." I cut in, my voice sharp as glass. "You sold me out years ago when you laughed at my ideas, when you shut the door in my face, when you left me to build my future alone. I'm not betraying the family business, I'm reclaiming it." The turkey sat untouched, the candles burning low, as if mocking the ruin of what was supposed to be a holiday of unity. I picked up my napkin, folded it neatly, and placed it beside my plate. "Dinner's over," I said softly, but with the kind of finality that silenced even my father. "Tomorrow, the world will know the truth. Everest Holdings owns Adams Software. And I'm not your forgotten daughter anymore. I'm your boss." I turned and walked out, leaving the wreckage behind me. Their stunned faces, their shattered pride, their silence thicker than the November night air waiting outside. As I stepped onto the porch, the cold wind bit my cheeks, but inside a fire burned hotter than ever. This wasn't the end of my story with them. It was only the beginning. The night air hit me sharp and clean, but inside my chest, everything still burned. I walked to my car, every step heavy with a mix of triumph and grief. For years I had fantasized about this moment, imagining the looks on their faces when they realized I wasn't the failure, the invisible daughter, the afterthought. But standing there, keys trembling in my hand, I realized it didn't feel like victory. Not yet. It felt like a wound that had just been cut open wider. I drove back to my hotel in silence, the streets of Boston glowing with Christmas lights, strung along storefronts and trees. Families walked arm in arm, laughing warm. I used to think my family would look like that one day, if only I worked hard enough to earn their respect. But now I knew no amount of love, loyalty, or success could fill the black hole of their greed. The next morning the headlines broke exactly as I'd predicted. Everest Holdings acquires Adams Software for $50 million. Beneath it, my name, Morgan Adams, revealed as M.E. Stone, reclusive tech founder. Reporters camped outside the Adams mansion, hungry for photos of my father's reaction. At the hotel lobby, a young receptionist handed me a folded newspaper with wide eyes. You're her, aren't you?" she whispered. I nodded, offering the faintest smile. For the first time in my life, someone was looking at me with awe instead of doubt. By midday, my phone exploded with messages. Old classmates, former colleagues, distant cousins, all of them suddenly remembered my number. But one call made my stomach twist. It was my mother. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Morgan." She breathed, her voice shaky. "How could you do this? You've humiliated your father. You've ruined us." I closed my eyes, leaning against the wall of my hotel suite. "No, Mom. You ruined me years ago when you let him silence me, when you watched him laugh at me in front of his board and said nothing. You let them cut me out over and over, and you drank your wine and stayed quiet. You chose silence instead of me." There was a long pause. Then softly she said, "I didn't think you'd ever fight back." "I learned too," I said. My voice broke, but I steadied it. "Because if I didn't, you would have swallowed me whole." She started crying, but I hung up. I couldn't carry her guilt for her anymore. That evening, I returned to the Adams estate one last time, not for reconciliation, but for closure. The reporters had thinned, but a few cameras still lingered by the gates. Inside, the dining room table was cleared, but the air still carried the sourness of that Thanksgiving night. My father sat alone at the head of the table, a tumbler of whiskey in his hand. He looked smaller somehow, his shoulders hunched. When he saw me, his eyes darkened. "Come to gloat?" I shook my head. "No. I came to tell you the truth one last time." I stepped closer, my heels clicking against the marble floor. "I didn't take Adam's software from you. You gave it away when you refused to see me. When you shut your eyes to the daughter who could have saved you. I built Everest because you wouldn't let me build here. That's not betrayal, it's survival." His jaw clenched, but his eyes betrayed him. Something flickered there. Regret, maybe. Or the sharp sting of realizing his power was no longer absolute. "I will run Adam's software with or without your blessing," I continued. "But I need you to understand one thing. You don't get to erase me anymore. Not as your daughter, not as your heir, not as the leader of the company you almost destroyed." He said nothing, just stared at the amber liquid in his glass as if it might rewrite the past. I turned and left him there alone with the empire he'd nearly lost to his pride. Outside, the night air was cold again, but this time it didn't sting. It felt like freedom. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing their approval. I had my own power, my own name, my own legacy. And this was only the beginning. Days turned into weeks, and the fallout from Thanksgiving rippled like shockwaves. The Adams name was everywhere. Magazines, business journals, even gossip blogs. For once, it wasn't about Garrett's scandals or Megan's influencer drama. It was about me. The forgotten daughter who became the heir no one saw coming. Inside the company, the change was seismic. The employees, many of whom had been bracing for layoffs under my father's neglect, welcomed me with cautious hope. I walked through the office not as the timid girl once laughed out of a boardroom, but as the woman who now signed their paychecks. I saw the relief in their eyes when I promised stability, innovation, and respect. For the first time, they believed in leadership again. For the first time, they believed in me. But behind closed doors, my family didn't go quietly. Garrett called nonstop, his messages swinging between rage and desperation. "You can't cut me out, Morgan. I'm the eldest. It's supposed to be mine." Megan posted cryptic videos online painting me as the cruel sister who stole everything. My mother sent long, wine-stained letters alternating between begging me to forgive and accusing me of betrayal. And my father, he stayed silent. The man who had once boomed with authority in every room now hid in his study, a ghost in his own empire. One evening, as I left the office late, I found him waiting in the lobby. His suit was immaculate, but his face looked older, drawn. He studied me with an expression I couldn't read: pride, regret, anger, maybe all at once. "Morgan," he said, his voice lower than I'd ever heard it. "I underestimated you." I stood taller even as my heart twisted. "You erased me." He nodded slowly. "Yes, and now I'm paying the price." For a long moment, we just looked at each other. The years of silence between us louder than anything we could say. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who stayed up nights rewriting code, praying he'd notice, aching for even a scrap of acknowledgement. She would have given anything for this moment, for her father to finally admit she was worthy. But I wasn't that girl anymore. You can't undo what you did, I said softly. But I can't carry it anymore. I'll run this company, I'll protect what's left of the Adams name, but I'll do it on my terms, not yours. He lowered his head, and for the first time in my life, my father had no response. I walked past him into the night, the city lights glimmering like 1,000 unspoken promises. The cold air filled my lungs, and I realized something I had never dared to believe. I didn't need their approval anymore. I never had. I had built Everest. I had claimed Adams software. I had carved my place out of the stone wall of their rejection. And in doing so, I had finally freed myself. So if you're listening to me now, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, dismissed, or told you were not enough, remember this. Sometimes the greatest revenge is not anger, not destruction, but becoming everything they said you couldn't. I was the daughter they ignored, and now I am the woman they can never erase. If my story touched you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, subscribe for more heartfelt stories, and leave a comment below with your own experiences. Your truth matters, your voice matters, and your story, just like mine, can be rewritten.